it's Drybear. Stalker 2 is just a day away. It's 24 hours away from now. We have release times for different time zones and a whole bunch of new things to talk about. The first thing to talk about is, as of today, Stalker 2 is the highest top-selling game on Steam, at least. Now, we don't have access to console numbers for Xbox, obviously, but at least for PC on Steam, it is, as of today, the highest, most selling, top-selling game available, which is huge because it's a game that started out as a very niche kind of cult classic style game. There's been a lot of drama around the release of it, and also the studio went through a bunch of highs and lows. Ultimately, at one point, claiming defeat, closing up shop for good, releasing their source files and saying we're done, to eventually getting a resurgence, coming back. It's been a long 12 years for them trying to get this sequel out, but it's great to see that the game is very much hyped right now and people are very excited to play it tomorrow. If you're wondering when you can play the game, this is their release time map. So at least for my time zone, US East, it'll be 11 a.m. EST, and then for like CST, it'll be 12 a.m. here, all the way on the other side, and then, you know, for like CET, 5 p.m. So like based on where you are in the world and what time zone you're in, you can figure out when the game is going to be available for you. And this is going to be the locked release time for both Xbox and for PC as well. Now, we were also very curious about all the people that got early access to the game. Either they got a review copy under embargo / NDA, or there's someone that got an early copy of the game. And so we have confirmed as of last night that the embargo for all review copies that were sent out lifts 2 hours prior to the release. So that same time frame tomorrow morning, you will then see 2 hours minus that. That's when the embargo is released. I'll be there checking to see if there's anything interesting coming out of the reviews and all that. Of course, we'll keep it spoiler free for people that want to just dive into Stalker 2 fresh and clean, but they cannot say anything about the game, about the review copy they have or the experience they'd had until 2 hours prior to the release. So we'll just have to wait and see. Now, we've talked a lot about this over the last week. Some people believe this is something that is a little bit negative because obviously it makes you feel like, what are they hiding? What are you trying to prevent people from talking about? If you're really confident in your game, why don't you just let people give their opinion and perspective? And I think in this case, they're just going to let everything happen all at once. There is definitely a risk of, you know, if it's too embargoed and it comes out and it's horrible. I always cite the Cyberpunk 2077 experience where all the early copies, they couldn't use their own footage. They couldn't really talk about anything other than how they felt about it. And then once the game came out, it was a complete mess, absolute trash show based on performance and how it worked, which ended up being very much in the negative for CD Projekt Red. So in this case, it can be very negative, but there's also situations where you give people a bunch of review copies and they absolutely slander the game. They either don't know how to play it, they don't know how to set up their settings. Like someone forgot to update their graphics drivers and then they said the game performs really poorly when really the error was a user error and that sort of thing. So it can work in both directions. It can be good for the developer, it can be bad for the developer. And honestly, at this point, we're so close to release, we'll just have to see whether you're going to play it or not. But based on the fact that it is the top seller on Steam today, means that regardless, people are still very excited to play it. And I think the original game wasn't, you know, beloved for its awesome, amazing, perfect performance or presentation, whereas this is going to be a much more elevated experience than we had with the original trilogy. But we also have someone who got an early copy of the game, and he's not giving out spoilers, but he's answering general questions along with some new dev Q&A on their Discord. So let's jump into those to see what the latest news is. First, a very important question: will we have the Bandit Radio return? One of the most well-known tracks from the Stalker series. You probably will recognize it. If you don't know what it is, you'll probably recognize it when you hear it. Specifically, it is very much in that same vibe, and they say that they will not only have the return of the Bandit Radio, but they'll also have multiple radio stations you can listen to, which will have a bunch of new tracks to play as well. Additionally, one of the more punishing parts about the old Stalker games is that you had to save, like quick save all the time, because it didn't really do that for you. It was super punishing. And there's also a lot of questions around whether they're going to make it as punishing as before, and we'll talk about that in a second. But one question that was asked on the Discord is, will there be more modern styles of saving? And the developers respond by saying there will be checkpoints automatically checkpointed for you as you go through the game. There will be autosaves, which means aside from hitting a checkpoint, there will be some points where you will hit an autosave portion. And of course, there will also be manual saves and quick saves. So all of the modern features you'd expect from a game will be there for Stalker 2. Another very interesting question, and something that a lot of people have been harping on, at least for modern gaming over the last couple years, And I'll add to this one question that they answered over the weekend as well. But they say, when holding down the pickup button, will it highlight items laying around? And they do confirm at least that they are highlighted by small white dots. Now, the original Stalker games were very immersive in that they didn't really have a lot of help for you, nothing in world. And again, they are modernizing the game a bit. They will have the controversial yellow paint that show you where objectives are and interactables are, but they also have confirmed that there will be an option in the settings to disable this if you just want the full immersive experience. And having items in the world that are highlighted by small white dots, I think will help modernize the experience as well. Some things are definitely there for the hardcore crowd, but I think there's also some things that don't really need to be as complicated as they were before. And the original engine that Stalker was on had a lot of limitations, which made it as like convoluted and complicated as it was, that don't need to exist on the new UE. Another huge question on everyone's minds that's been asked many, many times, because even the developers themselves talked about this prior to release, is the idea of multiplayer. Someone asked bluntly on the Discord, the official Discord, devs, will you add co-op to the game? And the answer was a stark no. This is confirmed to be fully single player. You will not be joining other people's missions or anything like that. This is a single player experience for Stalker 2. Another great question is, will there be any iconic weapons or armor? So in most single player games, there are these legendary uniques, these named uniques, mystics, abyssals, whatever you want to say, items that have very crazy powers and are better than any other piece of the gear. And they asked, will there be any of these in the game? And the developer responded with, yes, there will be unique items and named items as well. So on top of just getting very good gear in Stalker 2, there will also be some rare, legendary, unique, one-of-a-kind pieces that you can find alongside the artifacts that are also of that same variety. This is a big one that they answered in the Discord as well, is will the difficulty be handled as in the trilogy, different impacts on the overall gameplay experience? They confirm that it is a complex combination of different things, including less loot. So less availability of resources, more aggressive AI, things like that to make the game harder and harder for you. Now, they also reaffirm that they will be doing multiplayer at some point, some kind of multiplayer mode, which is going to be more of a like online PvP kind of experience, but they will not be doing a co-op. So the distinction there is very clear, that they won't be able to play through the story together, but they will have multiplayer on the way for some date in the future. A couple more things that have just been gathered from different articles and different places. They will be having an easy mode for the game. So if you don't want to do the traditional old school hardcore Stalker experience where you're suffering the entire time, which I personally enjoy, there will be easy options for you if you want to just experience the story and feel like you're just a super legendary Stalker. They also confirmed that there are going to be 4 different endings to the game, possible from the different actions and choices you make throughout the story. At least in the very original first game, you could get a secret ending by collecting an item in the very beginning and carrying it with you throughout the entire game. So I'm likely there's going to be options there. They also did confirm that there is going to be one of the 4 endings to the game that will be canon for the following 2 DLCs that will be released subsequently after launch. So there will be 2 more DLCs in the works coming for Stalker 2 after launch, and one of the endings will be canon for the next DLC that comes out after. There was also a question around their A-Life system. If you've never heard of this before, basically the original Stalker games were based on a double AI system. There was an AI system built for enemies that were in your immediate vicinity, and those were functioning in basic combat, but there was a system that they coined as the A-Life system that was built around the enemies that were outside of your immediate area. So there were livelihoods and actions and motions and migrations of groups of enemies to make the world feel alive, and this was a life or simulated life. Bandits would raid camps while you were gone, people would move. If you were trying to track down a specific stalker, they would move to a new location, and all of that was part of it. They had previously taken the A-Life feature off of their list on Steam, and some people were worried that this was going to be removed from the game in Stalker 2, but that is not the case. It is actually staying in Stalker 2. They have confirmed this for sure, that A-Life 2.0, the improved version, is going to be there for Stalker 2. And we'll finish out with this guy who ended up getting an early copy of Stalker 2. Don't worry, we're not going to spoil anything, and he was very specific not to spoil anything as well. He's been playing a little bit over the last 2 days and has been answering some comments on his YouTube video post, which I'll leave a link down below. Let's go over some of the responses to help ease the worries of people that are wondering about the game for release. First, he says that he tested the game shortly this morning, and yes, the fidelity mode runs way better than after the update. So they had previously put out 2 major updates for anyone who had early access or an early copy of the game over the last 48 hours. And they're saying that after the most recent update last night, the game is performing much better than it had been before. It's not perfect, but he's saying that overall the fidelity and performance is acceptable. Now, he's acknowledging that there are issues, some jagged moments, and also some FPS drops, but overall the FPS is between 55 and 60 FPS. And he also confirms that there is a performance 60 FPS and a fidelity 30 FPS option, especially if you're playing on Xbox. And just to reaffirm what we talked about earlier with the A-Life system, someone asked what about A-Life? Does the AI have routines and patrol the zone? And he says it's very much like the very first Stalker game, Shadow of Chernobyl. Stalkers run through the zone and fight other monsters and do their thing. Yesterday in a mission on a way to a research facility, an invisible monster attacked me. I thought the rest of the people on the way to the station would just run away. I couldn't shake the beast off. When I arrived at the station with the monster in tow, the patrols and the monster fought each other, and I watched it from a distance. Another person asks, how is the gore in the game? And he responds that it is kind of moderate to light. It's not a very gory or gibby game. It's very much about the atmosphere and presentation, but he does mention that there is blood and gore, just not to the level that you would expect from games like Dying Light. Someone asks, does it have HDR support? And he says, yes, it's some of the best HDR support that he's seen in recent memory. Another asks, does the game run smoothly in performance mode, or does the frame rate leave something to be desired? And he responds with, to be honest, there are games that run and maintain 60 FPS better. Far Cry 5/6 is perhaps not the best comparison, but it's open world and first person perspective, and it runs more smoothly. He also says that compared to the Silent Hill 2 release that he played on the same console, Silent Hill 2 ran worse than Stalker 2, which means Stalker 2 is at least equal to or better than the Silent Hill 2 remake. And that's what we've got for the Stalker 2 news today. Release times, updates, embargoes, questions and answers across the internet, and what we have going on for tomorrow. So let me know if you're picking up the game, if you've already pre-ordered the game, you're looking to jump into the game in the morning when it is available, and what you think about all these questions and answers from the devs directly. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.